Hello my plant beauties, it's Min. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and if you're new to the channel, welcome, and you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for coming back. Today let's go and propagate Senecio Macroglossus, otherwise known as wax ivy, and this is a succulent trailing type of plant, and it's very easy to mistaken it for a different plant called English ivy. But wax ivy is completely different to English ivy. So with propagating wax ivy, the first part is that we want to get cuttings. And we want to have cuttings where the leaves have mature leaves on it. We don't want to get cuttings that have the immature leaves or ones that the leaves are so small and it hasn't hardened up, because it's most likely those leaves that have, well, the cuttings that have those immature leaves, the cutting is less likely going to work. We want cuttings the length of around about 2 inches long, which is equivalent to about 5 centimeters long. And we want to make sure there's nodes, because nodes are important. Those are areas where new roots will grow out of and new leaves will grow out of it. We can locate the nodes very easily. The nodes are located where the leaves are growing out of it. That's the easiest way to tell where a node is. We get our clippers. We want to cut around about 1 centimeter, or which is it's about 1.5 centimeter below the node, which is equivalent to about 1 inch. And we cut it away, and we want to get as many cuttings as possible, because the more cuttings we use, the more likely the actual new plant's going to look more bushy, more lush, because there's a lot of cuttings rather than looking bold, because this is a trailing type of plant. And also we want to make sure that we have lots of cuttings, because with propagation, it's not 100% guaranteed that every cutting is going to survive and grow a new plant. So just in case we lose some cuttings, it doesn't matter, we have spare ones in the actual new plant or the new pot. And then the soil mixture I'm using consists of a very simple mixture of 50% potting mix and 50% cacti soil. This allows the soil to be well draining but hold a little bit of moisture. And the pot I'm using, there's 2 different types of pots I tend to use. The first one is just a plain old nursery pot, plain old plastic nursery pot that has a lot of drainage holes in it. We definitely want to make sure that our pot have drainage holes, because that's very important to avoid overwatering our new plant. And the second pot I'm using is a glazed ceramic pot, but it still has a drainage hole at the bottom. Got to be a little bit more careful with the ceramic pot, because the ceramic pot will hold the water in the soil a lot longer compared to, say, this plastic nursery pot. Once we have our pots, we're going to fill up the pots to almost to the edges of the pot. We want to leave about 1.5 centimeter or 1 inch below the edge of the pot. We don't actually want to completely fill up the pot, because if we completely fill up the pot with soil, when we water the new plant, the soil is going to come out the edges of the pot. So better to leave about a 1 inch or otherwise 1.5 centimeter below the edge of the pot. Once we've done that, we want to get a chopstick or any sort of stick that you have around, poke a hole in the soil, and then pop the actual cutting in the soil. We want to make sure if the bottom node has leaves, or the bottom leaves, or the bottom part of the cutting has leaves that are actually going to end up being buried underneath the soil, it's best to remove the leaves first. This ensures that the cutting is less likely going to rot, because if we end up burying the leaves in the soil, it's more likely the leaves are going to rot, and that will attract things like fungus and bacteria, and more likely that the cutting is actually going to rot away. So it's probably even best just to remove the bottom parts or bottom sets of leaves. Pop the node underneath the soil. We want to make sure that the node is underneath the soil and not hanging at the top. This will allow our cutting to grow roots faster compared to if we had the node just hanging above the soil. Once that's done and we popped all our cuttings in, we're making sure that the soil is tight around the node or tight around the cutting. Then we want to pop this new plant in an area where it receives a lot of bright indirect sunlight or morning sunlight. The reason for that is these cuttings are just fresh cuttings. They don't have any roots or anything like that. So the actual plant doesn't have access to a lot of water or a lot of nutrients. So if we pop it into direct sunlight, especially afternoon sunlight there, the cutting's not going to be able to absorb water fast enough, and then that can end up causing burning to the leaves, which in the end makes it less successful for the cutting to actually grow a new plant. So I tend to put it in an area where it sees a lot of bright indirect sunlight and then some morning sunlight as well. I actually leave it here for about 3 days before I actually water the new plant. The reason for that is that if I water this plant straight away, I just found that the cutting hasn't calloused off, the ends of the cutting hasn't calloused off, it hasn't sealed off yet. And if the ends haven't sealed off or calloused yet, it's more likely that rotting can occur. So I leave it in a place for about 3 days, and then I thoroughly water the plant, making sure that all the soil is completely moist, making sure that the water is draining out of the drainage hole. And then I let the actual soil completely dry before I re-water it again. And this is what the plant looks like after 1 month's time. There hasn't been that much growth, but I can tell that a lot of the cuttings have survived because the leaves are still looking fresh. They haven't died off yet. And so I know that the actual plant is actually prioritizing and putting all its energy in growing roots. And even when I tug on the cutting, it feels more secure. It doesn't feel like it's loose and moving around. It's actually already anchored in the soil, which means the roots have started to grow. This is what the plant looks like after 3 months' time, and there's a lot of more growth happening. And I've actually had to put some plastic trellis up because it's a trailing plant, so I didn't want it hanging on the ground. So I put some plastic trellis up, and it's looking fantastic, especially the one in the ceramic pot. There's a lot of new growth happening and it looks pretty full. And then this is the nursery pot, and the actual cuttings in the nursery pot haven't taken as fast. I can still tell that they actually still have survived, but somehow they're not growing as fast as the ones in the ceramic pot. And honestly, I'm not sure why. I treated both the same way there, and no idea. But if you have a different way of propagating your Senecio Macroglossus, otherwise known as wax ivy, I'd love to read about it in the comments section down below. And if you want to know more about plants, watch this video here on how I explain how to take care of a philodendron. I'll see you next video.